All right, everyone, we'll get started. And so let me just start by welcoming everyone. So thank you all first for being here. My name is Calvin Smiley. I'm an associate professor in the sociology department here at Hunter College. And I really am beyond thrilled to welcome you all here, both in person and for everyone online, for our panel conversation entitled From Prison to College, Education as Liberation in the Carceral State, with our honored panelists. Each panelist who I've gotten to know over the last several years, I'm really happy and privileged to have them here with us. First, at my opposite end is Beverly Emers, who is a Hunter graduate and a former student of mine. In fact, she is one of the best students I've ever had. And so I'm really, really excited that we can put this on and have Beverly included. Ms. Emers works with the families at Children Aid New York City, is a community liaison at the BronxArtSpace, and the curator of the social justice series Giving Light, which looks at gun violence as a public health crisis. Next is Marcelino Rodriguez, who I met when I began working at Horizon Juvenile Center in April 2021. Currently, he is the director of programming at Horizon for the Center for Community Alternatives, and is a small business owner of Out The BX Thrift, a vintage clothing company. From the beginning, Mr. Rodriguez was an advocate for the work and programming inside the youth facility and really showed me the ropes inside the facility and how to find my place in working with the residents. Lastly is Gigi Blanchard, the founder of the Kite, a storytelling program that works with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated youth in finding their voice and, by extension, their agency. It is Ms. Blanchard who gave me the opportunity to be present and work with the youth at Horizon, and I'm so fortunate for our partnership and our friendship in this endeavor to work with some of the most at-risk youth in our city. And so today, our panelists will share of themselves and the amazing work that they do as justice-impacted individuals and how those experiences have shaped their lives, outlooks, and the work that they continue to do. And before we begin, I want to make sure I also thank some folks for making this day come true, because it's not just the person speaking, but a lot of folks behind the scenes. So first, I must thank the City University of New York, specifically the Black, Race, and Ethnic Studies Initiative, more commonly known as BRESI, which awarded roughly $3 million to CUNY scholars. And I am humbly one of the recipients receiving a small piece of that for a project entitled Prison to College, Creating Juvenile Justice Through Education at Horizon Juvenile Center, where I am instructing an Introduction to Sociology course this semester and continue to do restorative justice programming at the facility, as well as put on panels like this today. Next, I'd like to thank Hunter College for allowing us to host this event, more specifically Hunter College President Jennifer Robb, Acting Associate Provost and Assistant Vice President of Academic Affairs Nicole S. Bennett, Bianca Valle of the Provost Office, who did most of the heavy lifting surrounding the logistics of today, Eric Reeves, who is running our virtual Zoom room, and my colleague Nishi Sawyer, who was also integral in planning the logistics and reserving this wonderful space that we're in. So thank you all. If we can just get a quick round of applause for that. So I did a lot of talking there. I hope that's the least amount of talking I do today, and we can jump right into the panelists. So I have questions, and the first couple questions are for all of the panelists. So if you can all take your turns in responding. And can you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and briefly describe your own background, your educational journey, and what the work and roles you currently have? So whoever would like to start.
Okay, hi. I'm Gigi. I'm super grateful to be here, and I'm really happy to see that the room is full of students as well. So cheers to you guys for going on this journey. It's not easy, but I had my own fits and starts and actually moonlighted at Hunter for a semester. But before that, I could say that officially I checked out of school before I dropped out of school. And I would say the last grade that I finished was really 6th grade. And as it were, in the youth institutions that I ended up in, you were made to go to school, but these are like really school-shaped nurseries. So we really weren't learning. And I got my GED in prison. And when I got out, I was encouraged by a mentor to go to college, and I was like, no, like college, this myth that college isn't for everybody, which I'd like to talk about later, but I really believe that college wasn't for everybody, especially not for me, a dropout, right? But she was really good to me, and I figured I would just go to college for her, just to like please her. And it was a few semesters in when something clicked, and I was like, oh, college can be for me. And so I continued on. That was Illinois State. I majored in anthropology, and later came here to New York, and I'm now doing an MFA at Columbia.
I just want to say that Professor Smiley is my favorite too. This is my MO, I'm always crying. That's my MO. But I want to say why he's my favorite. He helped me to understand my experience. He helped me to understand the racism within the system. I've done time in all of New York State prisons, out of prisons, and he just helped me understand it. And he helped me develop a human rights lens, and I appreciate that, right? And still those lessons reminisce, and I'm actually looking at notes as I begin to curate my next exhibit, which is synchronicity on mass incarceration. So it's giving me something that translates a lifetime for me, right? So a little bit about my story, like how did I get to college? So I live in the Bronx, and there was a time from seeing the makeshift memorials, which you see a lot when people getting killed, like you see that daily. And my son was young, and it started to plague me. I didn't want my son to be no RIP sign. I didn't want my son to be no candles on the sidewalk. So in my mind, I correlated education with his mortality. I don't know, I just started getting this thought, like if he was in school, if he did better, and just understanding, just hearing about the school to prison pipeline, and how some people were determining how many prisons to build based on Common Core. So it sort of alarmed me, and I didn't have the educational background to support him to be successful. So I began to volunteer, and in school, I had not graduated. I didn't have a formal education. And so it was a parent coordinator and Children's Aid, who I work for today, was the one who sort of engaged me. And they sort of planted the idea of, hey, you should go to school. But I didn't think I was worthy. I just didn't see it. And at the time, my son was graduating simultaneously, and I was like, you graduating? And one night laying in bed, he asked me when I was going to graduate. So I just felt like this is the sign. So it was a journey. So I enrolled in the EOC. I did college prep. I wound up going to Bronx Community College. I became student government, all the way to vice chair. Like I was a student who represented the whole CUNY system. And what education did for me, because it's a lot of things that you learn, but it's in and out the classroom. It was the experience. It was having reference points. It was coming to talks like this. And it sort of just opened the whole world to me. And I also have to thank, just the school system for me even doing the artistic work, because it was actually an internship for organizing class at Hunter that I went to BronxArtSpace to fulfill some time. And now I'm curating art shows. So it's like just the whole process. And I'm just really grateful. I'm really grateful to be here. And that's my life.
Thank you.
My educational journey is a recent one. Unfortunately and fortunately, I started school when I was incarcerated. So I say unfortunately because I missed out on a lot of the stuff that goes into that: graduations, family events, making friends, new schools, the stuff that comes with that. But I was fortunate to find education when I really needed it. I feel that, getting into school while I was incarcerated is what allowed me to like survive that. And survive a lot of the things that happen to people while they're incarcerated. I know we're gonna get into a lot of that, today. But I just, I say it's unfortunate, but I'm fortunate in many ways. It's weird to say that. It sounds, I'm hearing myself, it sounds strange, but I'm glad I found education where I found it. Thank you, everybody.
So, again, for all of you, can you just talk a little bit more about, the programs you went through, or the programs that brought you to college, and we'll just go back down the line again. And Gigi, you talked about this idea of college as a myth, so maybe you want to talk a little bit about what that means and how that kind of started from being a myth to now being in an MFA program at an Ivy League school.
Okay, so I won't put him out, but I'm really excited that a student is here as well, because like this is true. There are people that say, and even people who visit the program with us on the inside, who will open up with college isn't for everybody. And we hear that all the time, college isn't for everybody, but what does that actually mean? Like, I think that we have to debunk the myth that college is about getting a diploma and a job, because that's not really what, I know that that's part of what we're doing here on the campus is we want a degree, we want a job, but that's not what college really is at its core. Like you said, you missed out on making friends. Two of the main things that my students on the inside will say, and the same thing that we were saying 20 years ago when I was locked up, what will you do differently to stay out of trouble? I'll stay inside, or I'll get new friends. Well, staying inside works for a week. YouTube, video games, they're gonna get old a week, probably 2 tops, right? New friends, sure, that's realistic, but how do you get new friends when you live in the same building, on the same neighborhood? Like, how do you do that, right? And so college, I will say, is like really a tangible thing that can get you out, even if you're staying in the same building, out of the neighborhood, into new spaces, around new people, expose you to new ideas. Look at the people here, the people that you are exposed to, the people that you guys are exposed to in this room, just by going to a random event, right? I don't know if this is random, but an event for your classes, like everything that you guys do here exposes you to something. And I say this especially for people who are incarcerated. A lot of us are part of a cycle. And it's really hard to interrupt that cycle unless you find something to interrupt it to do differently, right? A lot of us come from like, my family didn't go to college. It wasn't realistic. Like, we got jobs, we worked at factories. And even when I started going to college, it was like, oh, you're going to use big words now. Like, oh, do you know how to put a sentence together? Ooh, what are you going to do with your fancy diploma? And I'll tell you, I didn't do anything actually with my anthropology degree. I do not regret it one bit. I didn't pursue anything. I ended up starting a business, and I didn't study business, right? But everything, I'm nerdy. Anthropology is actually really cool. If you guys are taking any anthro classes, like, they're great for conversations. But the point is that I did get that degree, and sure, some jobs will say, oh, you need a bachelor's degree. Why? Because it shows that you can be accountable to finish something, right? And they might not really care about what that degree is, but going to school is actually an exercise in accountability. It's an exercise in many things. And so when you're showing up and you're doing your classes and you're getting through math, and oh my God, like, math was like the hardest thing in the world for me. And I almost dropped out just because it was so hard. And it really was, and I said before, I only went to school originally because I had a mentor who was so good to me that I was like, I'm just gonna do this for her. And really, I found out about financial aid too. And I was like, oh, like, this is kind of nice. I wasn't thinking about all the debt. Like, it really didn't make sense with all the debt. But it was a few semesters in when it clicked, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not in the street anymore. Like, I am not like getting in trouble. I'm not fighting anymore. And I'm older. I'm older than I look maybe, but Facebook came out while I was in college. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to look for my prison sisters, the girls that I was locked up with. In the 90s, when we got out, there was no social media. So it was like bye forever. We didn't know whose house we were going to. We didn't know who foster care, which group home, where we were going. So it was like bye was forever. And so when Facebook came out, I was like, oh my God, I can find my friends. And I'm looking for them, and another one, and I can't find anybody on Facebook. And I said, you know what, where are they? So I look on inmate searches, and one after another, I'm finding all of my friends. And they're like doing life sentences. And I think, like, what did I do differently? And I will acknowledge the elephant in the room. I'm white. So the stuff that I was doing that could have got me locked back up if I was a person of color. I will say that. But I do believe that going to college got me out of the scene completely. And it was great not to be stressed out when a cop pulled you over. They're really pulling you over for the tail light, and not suspicious of what you have in the trunk. Like all of that was also really nice on top of it. But so I will say, like, this is the myth that I really want to debunk, that it's not really, the degree is great, but this is really exposure for you guys. Okay, so that's it.
This is what we're gonna do. So just to add, you know, just doing different things, just the benefits. When you're incarcerated, you develop behaviors and thought patterns along on top of the trauma. Coming out of prison, I wasn't the most friendliest social butterfly person. Just very hostile, wanting to fight, because, you know, just being conditioned. There is hardly any rehabilitation factor, like you have to look for it in prison. But what college did for me, it helped me, it helped contribute to my resilience. It helped to restore me. And for those students, faculty, staff that I met along the way that really cared, and saw the potential, that took the time, they helped me work on my emotional intelligence. And I still need work, because I still need work, always need work. But that is like the main thing that I could reflect on, that it changed how I interacted with people and how I engaged with individuals. And I found restoration. And so as far as new friends, I still have some old friends, associates, as the young people say, they outside, right? I don't judge them. Sometimes, you know, we go chilling. I don't try to preach, you know, and just hopefully my walk will inspire them. But they all know that I'm also a resource, right? And I think it's sort of, no, it is important to still keep my pulse on what's happening with individuals that are going through my very same experiences, because that allows me to help and advocate and navigate the path. And I just really believe, not saying that, you know, my destiny was to go to prison, but that's part of my journey to empower me to do the work that I do, and do it in such a way.
You know, just to add to what my colleague said, it sounds like we all agree that education is a form of resistance, right? Regardless of wherever it happens. Gigi graduated on the outside. I graduated on the inside. You graduated on the outside. While the distractions are different, like I didn't have access to what a free student would have. There were distractions. Things were happening to the non-working brain, the person that wasn't in school. So education kind of like allowed me to like push back and resist the things that were happening to my friends and, you know, guys I shared that space with. It was obvious, right? Like, I'm speaking from like a position of like, I could say that I was privileged, right? That I was learning and I was seeing things that my friends that were in the school weren't seeing, right? Like they were becoming victims of what took place in there, and I was able to like kind of resist that. And education does that everywhere, right? Like you said, you know, you can stay inside for a week, but then you're back outside. Even though I was incarcerated, like things were happening in the yard, things were happening on the cell blocks that were similar to like things that take place out here. You could get in trouble. You could get 20 more years for something simple, for not staying focused, for not, you know, being in the right place at the right time. But yeah, I just see like education in general, wherever it happens, right? It could be out here or while you're incarcerated. It is a form of resistance to like what happens to like the non-working brain, right? A resistance to the monotony, to the boredom. And I think that's what allows everybody, right, to kind of like push back. Right? Yeah, it opens doors, but it also allows you to like resist some of the things that you know are wrong with, you know, spaces today.
Thank you, all of you, for that. So I'm going to ask a couple pointed questions, and you know, others feel free to respond if the mood strikes you. But I'm going to start with Bev. And so we've already talked a bit about the work that you've done in the art space and working with specifically the BronxArtSpace. Can you just talk to us a little bit more about what goes into curating an art show and how your experiences, both as a justice impacted person and as a college graduate, gives you a lens to see things in the way that you want to curate them, if that makes sense?
Well, first of all, my experience is like the best tool, and things that I read. I'm gonna be real honest, a lot of times it's spirit. It's sort of just happening and things are coming to me. And allowing spirit to lead me to come up with a concept. And so what goes into it, I come up with a theme, we write a press release, and it goes out, right? So you have a theme, there's no guarantee that the art that comes is going to translate your theme. And I'm in that process right now. So applications are coming in. And so, you know, you want this show to take you on this journey and show you what the theme is trying to translate. It's been very powerful. A lot of times I'm in my own head, like sort of worried, like, is it gonna come out all right? But it's about like having faith that things will turn out all right. But then what happens is during that process, you meet artists, right? Artists who are communicating what I feel through film, through readings, through poetry. It's really an awesome process. And then with the artists, I begin to even learn more because it enhances my thought process. Because let me give you an example. The first show that I curated, there was a piece in the show, it was a hashtag and it was made out of hair. It was called Not Just a Hashtag, and it was made by an artist, her name is Tasha Dujet. And it was inspired by kintsugi. I didn't even know what kintsugi was. I was like, I'm a curator, I need to find out. So I started to do some research, and the kintsugi was the sort of the art of embracing your imperfections. So if you ever saw like a porcelain Japanese inspired dish or bowl and it's cracked with the gold lining, right? And then there was this whole conversation through art, and I was like, I'm kintsugi, right? Embracing my imperfections. And so I began to look like, I need this kintsugi, I need kintsugi. And I kept seeing this video of this woman named Azumi Uchitani. And I reached out to Azumi. Azumi then slept on my couch in the Bronx all the way from the Netherlands. And that translated, right? That one art, I then was able to take that, what I learned in the show, get a grant, and have conversations with individuals with backgrounds like me or domestic violence and facilitate a conversation. So that's what art does. It helps facilitate difficult conversations, and it helps people understand. And I'm so grateful for that. From a person, I hated art classes. I hated art class. And I think it's very important. And I'm on a mission to tell people that every budget, every city budget, every social justice piece needs to have an art budget attached to it. Because not everybody could digest or you know, they may not be able to digest the materials, but they could paint it, they could talk it, they could, yeah.
I agree. That's I don't know. It's like my next question is for Marcelino, and as Marcelino, you said you went through school on the inside, and for folks who don't know, Marcelino went through what's known as the Barred Prison Initiative here in New York State, and it's one of the few college programs that is totally inside. In the early 90s, the U.S. government stopped giving Pell Grants to people on the inside to get publicly funded college degrees, and so you went through this program that Bard College puts together, and I guess as you said, you were fortunate enough do that, but you're also fortunate to also be incarcerated in a state that happens. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you decided to go to that program, what the process was to be admitted into that program while you were incarcerated, and then just as kind of to round that out, how did you keep focus? As you just talked about, you know, there were shenanigans, right? There's shenanigans on the inside. So what kept you focused to continue to go to school and do all that kind of stuff?
So as you can imagine, like any program or anything that is considered to like happen outside of like state control, it's high in demand. Everybody wants to be a part of something that the CEOs are not controlling, that the system is like, that kind of functions outside of the system. And often these programs take place in facilities that are closer to the city, which means easier access to your family, friends, which means that the people that work there look like you. So, I mean, it's high in demand. Everybody wants to get there. So it's very competitive. Guys all over the state are competing to get to these buildings just so they can get into college, so they can stay there, right? Some of them, the majority of them, yeah, they want college, but it also means I'll be closer to my family for longer. It's easier for them to come see me. And a lot of these facilities have less violence. Most people are trying to stay there, stay out of trouble. And most of us are doing the right thing while we're there. It's easy to, I'm not gonna say people are not, you know, the shenanigans are not taking place, but it's easier to focus in a setting like that, especially when you're part, like, if let's say there's 1,000 people there, 150 of them are in college. That's a large network of people helping each other stay out of trouble. They stay out of trouble. You have friends, you have, you know, students that lock next to you. It's like, you know, there's a large network of people like advising each other. If you're getting in trouble, somebody's gonna pull you up and talk to you. So as far as like staying out of trouble wasn't like super hard, but you remember what it took for you to get there, right? Like you usually suffer a few years, 8 hours away from your family, seeing extreme violence, you know, getting called all type of names by staff. That once you get there, you know what you have access to, you know what it took to get there. It's easy to like stay focused and not want to lose it. And you can see how that would transfer to the outside, right? So that's another form of education, right? Like I also learned to appreciate certain things while also getting an education.
Let me ask just two quick follow-up questions to what you just said. One is, how long were you in before you were able to get into the program? And then how long did the program take you?
I was incarcerated 10 years, 11 years before I got into BPI. And it took me 7 years to get my bachelor's. 7 years because it's like a gap in between, like you might graduate on time, but you might not. Time is not time, but you're
Right, it's
that
different.
changes, yeah, it's a little different. But yeah, it took me 7 years to get my bachelor's.
Thank you. Yeah, great, appreciate you.
Can I just chime in real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Because you talked about not being incarcerated, not having access to education. And there just was recently a campaign, Turn on the Tap, and I believe it's being restored so you can, so it's not so many barriers.
Right.
And I just want to say that this is systematic on how they just don't want people with skin tones to survive, you know, to survive and be successful, right? Because school is supposed to be one of the tools for upward mobility and restoration. And so around that same time that they sort of eliminated that was also the same time that they didn't allow you to go to college if you was on public assistance. So I just want to put it out there how there's just systems, it just doesn't happen. And I just needed to lift that up.
Yeah, no, totally right. And we know through research that the more education someone has, the less likely they are to end up in a prison setting. So we know that there are absolute correlations between education and not being incarcerated. So my other pointed question is for Gigi here, as someone who was a justice impacted teen and now has her own company called the Kite, which is very much about storytelling programs within incarcerated settings, particularly working with youth and teenagers. And, you know, as anyone knows, right, the teenagers are a whole different, I'll say beast, because, you know, it's like you're dealing with hormones and puberty and going through life and also now being in this super hostile, violent setting. And so can you just tell us a little bit more about when you envisioned starting the Kite, what drew you to the storytelling as like the focal point, and how have you seen that work with the youth that you've done this program?
Well, on the first note, we also work with adults, and night and day storytelling with adults versus storytelling with young people. We don't think vulnerability is cool when we're young, so it makes it harder to get people to tell stories. So the first point is storytelling is a salve for the soul. It's for the person that hears the story and for the person telling the story. So when it comes to adults, like the women at Rikers, like we're ready to tell stories. But when it comes to young people, especially at, you know, Horizons and where we work, we have to tell the story first. It's sort of the gateway drug to telling stories is hearing a story. And I would admit that I did not go about this and I want to start a program for prison. No way. Have you would have told me this when I got out, like I would have been like, you're crazy. I do not want to work in prisons. I do not want to go near it. It's a vacuum. I got out. It's going to suck me back in. I was afraid because prison for me, it was actually home to me. Like I enjoyed prison better than I enjoyed home. And I kept doing things to get locked back up. As a white person, I kept getting sent home. Whereas my peers were getting locked up for things that I wasn't even getting arrested for. And I was like, but they have 3 meals a day and locked doors and it's great. And this is crazy, right? Because there should be alternatives. But for me, it was actually better. And so when I got out and I realized that, oh my gosh, that I should have never felt like prison was home. That is just, you know, I did not want to go back to it because what if prison felt like home again? And then I'm like, oh, who cares about freedom? Then all of a sudden I'm back in prison. So I was actually terrified. So I'll tell you, when I found out all of my sisters, we did feel like we were sisters. When I found out they were doing basically life sentences, I felt I had to do something. I really needed to do something. We did not have programs where I was locked up in Chicago. We had church groups that came and we would go if they had donuts. And that was basically it. That's all we had for programming. I got my GED, like I said, only because I wanted to sit on the graduate wing and do nothing all day. Because in the classroom, we actually had to sit quietly and like read to ourselves. And I wanted to go like turn up on the graduate wing and like listen to WGCI, which is a Chicago station. I don't even know if it's going on. But so that there was no aspirations for anything like college or school wise. Like I was ready to get back on the street. Like there was no inspiration there. But as I said, I went to college, and then when I saw that everybody was still in prison, I wrote like my thing that got me through my time was writing and journaling. And I never took myself seriously. Nobody ever told me the fake it till you make it thing. Like I didn't know that was real. So I was like a closet writer, and I felt like, you know, I should write this book because people need to know like why young people get into the system and stay into the system, and also like what happens there. And like I went to college and I'm out of it. Like maybe this is like the secret sauce. Like I have to talk about it. So I actually went in writing, and I was taking continuing ed courses. I had already graduated. I was taking continuing ed courses. They have some at the new school, and I was really getting into it and writing. And then I heard that I had to build a platform, which is a thing when you're like aspiring to sell a book. And I was starting to write essays, and I didn't write like cheesy, like I didn't care. Like I really cared about the stuff that I was writing, which made me think about something that what you were speaking of drew to my mind is disenfranchisement. We have to do a whole panel on that. So I won't go down that hole, but how we were, you know, basically warehousing people away from their families. Like that's what we do. That's what prisons essentially do in the US. They warehouse people away from their families, and at places, especially where I was in Chicago, where public transit can't even get to. So then you become disenfranchised, right? You're now out of the community. So hell yeah, it's really hard when you get back to the community because you're not a part of that community. So you don't care about stealing from that community or doing whatever you do to it. That's not even your community. Your community is the prison, right? So anyways, I wanted to write about all that, and especially about the close to home. They were building them in the city. They weren't building them on the Upper West Side or East Side, we'll just say that. But the communities were like, no, not in my neighborhood. And I felt like I needed to write about that. And I wrote this one piece that actually got me invited to start speaking at ACS. And then somebody said, come teach at Rikers, a 6-week workshop. And I was like, 6 weeks, that's all you'll get. Like, that's it. And I was so scared, like not of Rikers or the inmates. Like these were my people, really. I felt like that in my heart. I was really terrified of myself and how comfortable I might be. And I got there and really, I was right. Like I'm there all the time, right? And I'm in more detention centers, but I realized like within 10 minutes, I was like, oh my God, like I'm supposed to be here teaching. Like, this is what we're supposed to, this is the work. Like, this is more important than the book, right? And so I will say, like, I did kind of shelf it and just really, that was 2016. And that 6-week work, it never ended. We stayed there. They raised the age. We went to Horizons with them and we started teaching adults. And now we're full on and I get to work with amazing people like you guys. Maybe you'll get to come and work with us too. I haven't got to work with you yet. But really, that's how it started. And I just did an example of what storytelling does, right? Like telling this story, or even when I'm telling, our young people, like, Joe was like fake lit, like it was better than home. You always get a few people like Gigi, like, we have young girls that keep getting locked up and you'll hear a CEO like, oh, she's really messing up her life this time. She keeps coming back. And I'm like, this is what we should look at. Like, why are we still coming back? It's not the person. I think often we have to also look into the community and what needs to be restored. And I love that you say that restorative, it's so important. And I think we're looking at the wrong things when we're also like punishing, we have a punitive system and it's such a misnomer, Department of Corrections. Okay, I'll back up it.
Or how about
That's how it's
justice?
Right.
justice.
No, thank you for that. No, I totally agree. So I want to kind of, before we open it up for Q&A in a couple minutes, I just want to ask a question, and this is for anyone on the panel who can answer, or multiple people. So as I said earlier, the reason this panel is happening is because there was this this call for grants, and as I said, I was awarded one, and part of that was to teach a 3-credit course, intro to sociology course at Horizon, which I'm doing right now. And one of the things that I'll say is that, I think we had 19 young men sign up for the class, but we have more than 19 every week who are attending and showing up and want to be there. And I think a lot of that had to do with, for some young men, it was like, I don't know what college is, or they had like college was this abstract thing. And then when they showed up and I was teaching them and we had stuff and it started to click, we started to see more of them. Can you just tell us like, what your favorite classes were? What sort of classes do you think are needed? And should we, I think I know this answer, but should we continue to expand public and state funding in education into our prison system? And how does that look like for you? Or how would you envision that?
All right, okay. We always need more coins, but more money is good, but you can't always throw money at a situation. It's necessary to have individuals with particular experience to navigate, because so often we see money thrown at a problem and the problem is still there. They throwing a lot of money at gun violence.
In the police.
Billions. And now it turns into poverty pimping, but that's a whole nother thing, right? God, what was the question again?
Just so, what type of courses do you think are inspiring, or what kind of courses do you think are needed inside these facilities to keep, young folks, or just folks in general who are justice impacted? And would you agree with that we should expand college within corrections?
Okay, so we know art has to be there, but not only in prisons. How about making it accessible in schools and not waiting for an outside organization to bring in because the school's saying they don't have the budget? So I think it needs to be intertwined throughout society. And as far as the classes, when the best experiences that I had in CUNY, besides doing the human rights course and understanding policy and understanding the back end, like how the setup go down, right? Just understanding that. When I was here, I was part of Welfare Rights Initiative. That just really did a lot for me. As far as education, professionalism, and understanding, and I'm still part of that. And I actually have a policy proposal that the state wants to adopt.
Amazing.
From a class that is going to help just translate with parents and families. That was important. Student government was important. As a matter of fact, Hunter is having an election right now. I walked by them and I told them, look, don't let this be the only time student body sees you, because then, you know, they disappear. But those outside experiences, student leadership, CUNY has a lot of programs for that. If you go into the website, and I also did a model senate when I was here, where I like took on the district, understood the district, the demographics. So as far as classes, I would say definitely the human rights, the whole human rights public policy here at the Roosevelt House, Welfare Rights Initiative. And then also had some bad experiences. I had some crazy experiences with some professors here. Listen, right? And I'm just grateful to be experienced and be mature, because I just want to say this to all your professors that's out there listening, that you have the ability to help someone thrive, or you could totally destroy them, right? To the point where they won't even come to class no more. I saw that. And I confronted the professors. I could do that because I'm not young, I'm not never scared. And so I just want to say that to professors, that you have the opportunity to contribute to our society by how you engage a student in the classroom. Yeah, I had some crazy experiences. The good, the bad, everything is a learning experience.
I got a crazy idea.
Okay.
And I think about this a lot, and I think about this when we're going in and doing we're technically an after school program when it comes to the young people, and we're just like a couple of hours in there a week when it goes to adults. And then we're out. And we are told all the time, like I've had students, we do a trivia, we open up with a trivia, like name some continents, like stuff that I wish the kids were learning in school, but they're not. And a lot of the young people like me dropped out, and they're at school like, I'm not going to school, and some of them want to and can't for whatever reason. And they're learning trivia with us. We're an arts program, and they're learning history and continents. They're like, oh, this is kind of fun, like using my brain, right? And I do think, you know, the brain is, I don't even think like this is a fact, like just like the body sitting in one place will become atrophied, the brain does too. And in prison, it's an absolute danger to become atrophied if it doesn't do something or have access to education or books, or even the want to do the books. And I talk about this all the time. And I'm thinking, we have people locked up here. Some of them are going to do years. What if this might be crazy, there are teachers that we're hired to work in these places? Why is this just an installation in the evening for a couple hours once a week? Why isn't this who is running, who are daily exposed to people who want to teach? And I think this is where this money needs to be thrown, because I know that it's a job and it's not a high paying job and it's dangerous, but I also think we have been there for a while. And I haven't been threatened or in danger. And I think that there is a respectability also that comes when you're giving this thing, this light in this dark place. And I think that if these places were ran by teachers, and this is who is staff, we don't need staff. We don't need babysitters in these places, okay? We need educators. So.
Yeah, and I'll just say real quick, and I agree with you 100% with pay people more. I'm on a committee for something else that's doing reentry, and one of the conversations came up about having basically like rec centers, like leisure centers where they could be drop-in centers. It didn't have to be a place where someone goes for social work, or like literally just a place for people to chill. And someone on the call said, yeah, we can get volunteers in there. And I laughed. I was like, no, you want to pay people 6-figure salaries to operate that place, because then they will take care of it. They will keep it up. They will feel motivated. They will feel that the work that they're doing is important. There's this weird cultural effect that if you're doing service work, you have to either do it for free or for a little bit of money, right? And I think that needs to really be a paradigm shift in our society. Like the millionaires need to be the social workers, and the thousandaires need to be the crypto bros. You know what I mean? Like I think like it needs to be flipped. That would be my thing. I'm sorry. I don't know if you have something.
I agree.
On that, Marcelino.
No, so I agree with what everybody said. As far as like types of well, my favorite classes was Russian literature and existentialism. Those two helped me understand where I was and the people around me, like better understand the people I thought hated me and why I felt they hated me. So as far as education in prison, I think it should be in every prison, right? Because these are institutions and systems that are molding everybody, right? Not just the people who are there. It influences everybody in different ways. So I think like a place like that, I wish we didn't have college in prison. I wish we didn't have prisons, right? But we have them, right? And it's a traumatic experience. I think college is important for us to understand that, right? Why is this happening to me? Why am I here? What brought me here? What's waiting for me on the outside? If college is there, I think it goes back to what Gigi said, right? For you, prison was home, right? Because the place you were being released to didn't look like home. But if these places start to have the things that home has, you know, like he said, teachers, you have it as well. College, they have to start resembling the places that we're going home to, right? For the release to not be a traumatic. So yeah, I vote yes. Every jail, every holding center should have some type of education, some type of college, some type of teacher there. Because like if kids, adults, anybody, we keep getting incarcerated and we don't understand that system and these institutions and why they operate the way they do, like it's always gonna be like a lingering trauma, right? That we never really understand. So,
Wait, because you shared your crazy thought about, you know, just both of you talked about education in prisons and people doing time. Did you kind of point to maybe these individuals doing these long stretches of time that we make them teachers or teacher assistants?
100,000.
Right? So when you think about a community and an ecosystem, those individuals that are there, they may never come home. Imagine if they became the education stewards.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll throw this out. I work with a gentleman who contacted me. We had like something that went out. I won't even plug it because it will feel like a shameless plug, but it went out in a magazine and he contacted me from a prison, from death row in Michigan. Like what? Like who? That was like what? He is on death row and he runs this educational network and they do so much work. They write letters of contrition and it is like this most magical, inspiring. And the letters that these guys write on death row, like they write letters of contrition to the women at Rikers, like, hey, you got this, shorty, like keep your head up. Like they not to anybody in particular, but and I've even like rock up and let the young people read them and they're like, why are they so positive? Like, well, like they're doing time, like, you know, they're facing everything. But I think that this is what the inspiration is, that somebody who could be faced with that much time also being the educator is so like inspire. It's like, why am I worried about like my cell phone battery being dead? Like that's not something to be stressed about. It's like, no, it was like, we had, no, it was years ago. I don't even think about it. We had the program was featured in O Magazine. I don't think O Magazine is around.
That's Oprah's one,
Oprah's
right?
magazine, yeah. But it was like the thing with people like donate things to prisons all the time, and people started contacting me like a year after the magazine came out, and I was like, what? Like this is. But I think people were like doing their spring cleaning the next year, and like all of a sudden, people were contacting from different prisons around the nation. Was pretty cool.
Can I add something? So, that goes back to what you said, like prison feeling like home. It sounds weird saying that, but I lived longer incarcerated than I did as a free man. I have family still there, a lot of friends. So I don't look at it as like I'm going back to jail. It's like I'm coming back to visit my family, right? And what you just mentioned is a form of doing that. And I think that that's important. We do it in a different way, but it's definitely important. You can't forget about family, friends, what used to be home, right? Sometimes it happens to me, like I have like this weird nostalgia, like I'll smell something or hear something and I'll miss, like I had these little pockets of peace, right? And I will miss that, like I wish I could have that. But it took place and it happened in a weird environment, right? But it's okay to say that there were times where I felt at home there, right? Because I had family and friends there. I had good teachers there. I had, you know, things that allowed me to feel human in a crazy space. So that the idea of like, we're coming back home to visit friends and family is important, right? Even if it is a shitty like jail, right? But it does have a place in our hearts and minds, right? And I think that we should, as you mentioned, like go back, teach, and give back and do something. Because it is like it's weird home for some of us, right?
You're making me think of something. I get asked this, I know this isn't about like particularly like programs inside prisons particularly, but people are often like, how come the storytelling program is successful? How come working on the inside has been as successful? Because like I've been there since 2016. People come and go. Like programs have come and gone, and if you stay, and I think that what makes it successful, and what I've noticed that these guys do that I work with the students, like, who do you work for? Like, who's your boss? I tell them, you are. Like, I work for you. And I think that even teachers need to like get out of their head that they have like the boss who is the admin guy, whoever, the CEO of the college, like we work for you, like the student, like you're who our boss is. And you guys can work like we're like, you know, working for you, and let us know what you need too. And I think that that's what creates the environment where they can learn, you guys can learn, is if we know what you guys need, then we can teach what you guys need and teach how you guys need too. So I think that that's really important to know that you guys are the boss.
With that, can we show our panel a round of applause before we get to Q&A? Thank you all for sharing. And if you want to open it up, if there are any questions from the audience, or if there's any questions on the Zoom.
Questions yet?
No questions on the Zoom yet? Yes, question up front, yes.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for organizing this panel. This is amazing. My name is Delana Lewis. I'm a co-executive director of Healthcare Rights in Latino, and very privileged to have had Beverly as a student when she was here. A question I have is, and I hear this a lot from past students, you need your voice in spaces that were not created for you, right? The decision makers are making decisions around what criminal restoration looks like and all that, and you want to be in those spaces. But oftentimes what I get back is this sense of being re-traumatized, telling a story, oftentimes by not in this setting, but in other setting where it feels a lot like what Beverly mentioned, poverty pimping, and then you're left, and then the student is left retelling all these stories and feeling very vulnerable. And I remember one time a student texted me, she said, "Dee, I just need to speak to you for a second because I can't go back yet on that panel." So it's wanting to be in spaces that are traditionally not designed for you, but how do you, what responsibility do we have in academia and community to make sure that those spaces are not just about re-traumatizing without the accountability for the change that the stories were supposed to be helping to change?
That's a great question.
So I'm gonna share just an experience that I had where it was that way. When I was at BCC, I was awarded the Khalid Browder Memorial Scholarship. And for those who don't know Khalid Browder, I encourage you to look that up. It was very traumatizing. And I was being exploited. A lot of newspaper, and at one point I just had to shut down. They actually invited me to be part of the movie, the 13th. But I didn't even know how to metabolize everything that was happening. And it's just, now that I'm a little, used to speaking, but this is something that we should really think about, especially when we do ask people to share their stories that have, trauma within it. It was very hard for me, like very hard for me. And I think that it should be something discussed, especially in the realm of academia, when you ask people to come speak or share their story, how and how do you help the person maybe kind of close back up. But I had those experiences earlier on, and I was just so willing to share, but not even realizing the damage that I was causing myself, because like I just felt like, I should share, it's nothing. Like I felt like, oh, it's my story. It's nothing. It's nothing for me to share my own experience, but being more aware now, I know how to shut it down. Or somebody asks me if I know they're coming from a crazy place, like I know how to shut it down, but I think it's something that we really should consider. Yeah.
I think about that too. I'm inside, like, for example, in the women's facilities, we are creating a safe space where the women often aren't talking about this at all. And so this is the opportunity to share amongst each other, whereas they couldn't talk about this abuse or this trauma in another setting inside the jail, because people can use your story as a weapon even. So it's even like, not only do you have the open wound, but now they're using that against you, like, oh, that's why such and such, right? And so we make rules, and it is very restorative justice informed, and that's a whole other panel, like to talk about how restorative justice circles and healing circles work. But make the rules of the space. The people in the space make the rules. And I think, you know, the difference between our program is that we're not having somebody stand on a podium and tell their story and then we close it out, clap, and then say bye. It is, like I said, the salve for the storyteller and the person who's listening to it. So often what happens, I've told, you know, my stories of, you know, incarceration, you know, domestic violence, like things that I've been through. And I think that that's sometimes just hearing somebody else's story, even if they're identifying or telling another story, often is like this sealant on that wound that you've opened, and it allows you to heal by hearing that somebody else is gone through something too. So I think it's really, it is a very fine line. And I think about this too, whenever, you know, young people are going on panels and speaking about their trauma for big initiatives, because when they're done, the podium's off and then we're moving on to another topic and nobody's sharing also the trauma, right? You've shared something and now you're an open book to everybody and now we're moving on. And what did my story just do? And I think that possibly, you know, the people who are holding these panels or at these spaces also need to share something. I think that we need to be as vulnerable as the person that we're asking to be as vulnerable, because they shouldn't just be an island to themselves on that vulnerability podium. I don't think it's fair. And it could be damaging in the end.
Thank you. That's true. So, one thing we see with like a lot of the kids that tell stories with us is that a lot of them have open cases, so they can't really open up the way that they like to. So we just tell them, you know, leave out what you want, like use whatever colors you want, paint this the way you want. Like, it's your story. You can still tell the story without being too specific, right? We do that. We do that when we meet somebody. We do that on social media. We do that at job interviews. We try to paint ourselves in the most welcoming light. Sometimes even sitting on these panels, like a lot of stuff can be triggering, but I know like I'm in a privileged position where I can kind of like toe the line a little bit and pull back when I feel like speaking too much. I think that that's like important, like when we like try to invite people to open up, just making them feel comfortable, letting them know you know this is your story. Color it how you want, and pull back when you're ready. And it works with the kids, like, and it's something that I remind myself when I do things like this. I don't know if anybody knows, but I was kind of nervous at the beginning. And now, like, you know, I see, like, I know you guys. My partner Eve is right here. You know, that's my blanket. But yeah, so it's like just that, right? Like, you know, you giving me that comforting nod. So it's the same thing, right? So when you invite somebody to share, it's just like share what you can, share what you want, stop when you're ready. And we do that with the kids, we do that as grown-ups, but it's very important.
Yeah, and the fact of it is too, like you're in prison, right? So you already know that not everybody in there is guilty, right? But you're already like being accused of something, right? I've done something wrong. And the way that we really approach it is not like talk about what you did, your crime. No, hurt people, that's the fact. Like, we're not looking at what you did here. Often I'm even asking, what did the community do to you? Like, you're not just like, you know, you're also like, we're also victims of other things, and maybe victim isn't the right word here, but we've all been through some stuff, whether we're in prison or not. And really we focus on like, what do you want to tell first of all? And sometimes they don't even notice that something has happened to them. They've just been told the narrative, you're a bad kid. And even for the longest time when I said, oh, I went to prison, oh, you were a bad kid. And you start to, you know, take that in and really think like, I'm a bad person. And then it just sometimes takes one person like, no, you're not. Like, what happened? Like the question and what you ask when storytelling, like, what did you do? Like, what happened to you? What have you been through? Like, what do you want to talk about? Also, and I've noticed this from some of the stuff that I bring in. I don't bring in like sad stuff. Let's talk about like all the crime in the city. We need to bring joy in there too and talk about joy and really focus on what good has also happened to us. So I think that there has to be a balance when you're doing the storytelling.
And I'll just round this question out for 30 seconds because obviously I'm the one who organized this. And I think that's a great question. Something I think about all the time is like, how do you do this work and it not either be exploitative or you know, to diminish the amount of harm that you do. And I'll just talk about this grant. So because of this Bresci grant, it's a research type of grant. After I was awarded it, the CUNY administrators, whoever, were emailing me like I didn't fill out my institutional review board, which is IRB, which is the kind of grant office that says if you're doing research on something, you have to go through this process. And I had a back and forth with them saying, this is not for research. And they were like, what? And I was like, no, I work with youth because this is whatever you want to call it, my calling, something I'm passionate about, the hill I'll die on. It is not something where I go into that facility to extract these youth stories to then use that as capital for my career. As I always tell everyone, I have enough research on my plate that I don't need to do that. And I also very much adhere to the late great boxer Muhammad Ali's quote that says, service to others is the rent that we pay for our time on this earth. And so the work that I do at Horizon, as well as doing reentry with some of the young folks who get out, is that service.
Wow.
So you make it.
I don't have no organization. I'm a brand. No, it's not. But I don't have an organization. I think eventually it will come. And I just let spirit sort of guide. So I'm just in little places, a lot of different places, but I don't have an organization.
You are the organization. Mine was like, I actually went into it writing just as a writer, and I was asked, like I said, to teach that one-stop class, but I realized that I needed to be there like regularly. And actually we were just volunteer because as it happens, they do believe a lot of places think that we all should just volunteer, and it just didn't become sustainable because now they wanted me to add a class and then another class. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was bartending even to like buy supplies and pencils and like trying to find time because this became a priority. And I was like, I need to make this sustainable. So I found a way to incorporate myself as a sole prop actually. And then I contract with the city because the city does have money. And I really do feel like that money is the students' money. And so it's not like taken, it's not like about making money and make a business. Actually, my business model is to go out of business because that would mean that the prison is closed. And so really, we try to bring in really great, and I'll say this to you guys because actionable items, right? What can we do? There are tons of organizations that you guys as college students could even participate in. And a lot of people start out as volunteers with me that I end up hiring. And so this is a way to not only, get experience, but possibly even a job. But the reason why I encourage it is because it's exposure. So if you're in these New York City high schools, or if you're in these spaces, you're actually the difference that is being exposed to these students who otherwise are just in their own space. And you're all of a sudden bringing college to them and bringing the exposure to them. And then something might click and they're like, oh my God, this is what a college student is. This is what it is like to be around these other people. So I think this is problematic. A lot of programs bring, and they don't end up lasting. They only bring people who are formerly incarcerated because they think only formerly incarcerated people can do this work. And that's not right. We need to bring other people in because as one student said to me, can I pass? Oh, as one student said to me when a guy was giving a speech about like doing time, he was like, and then I came out with my arts program and the gentleman was like, oh, a girl, everybody comes out to the girls here. And I was like, ask them what they're actually doing. And I asked the guy, like, can you tell them what we do here? He was like, listen, no disrespect, but we're in jail. We do jail shit all day. We don't want to talk about jail shit all day. And so we would like to do something different. And so it was like, oh, yes, okay, do something different. That's also valid to talk about what it's going to be like upstate and why you got to get it together and be the village. But we also need to expose different ideas. And so you guys are all that exposure. And so I really encourage you to get in those spaces and don't like get taken advantage of. Obviously, if somebody is asking you to do a lot of work, be like, how much am I, like, I'm worth something. Like, where's the job at? How do I apply for a grant? Contract with the but there's a whole layer to it, like getting grants and contracting with is a big thing. So depending on what you want to do, finding a way to do that. There's something called the MWE, Minority Women Business in their Enterprise, and there actually is front row seating for people who have a certification with your business. So it's a really cool thing to get a part of too.
You got a business.
Yeah, so I don't have my own organization, but the organization that I work for is like what I would want mine to look like. So I work for the Center for Community Alternatives, and it's an alternative to incarceration organization, and they the reason why I work with them and I plan on staying with them for a while is because they don't hire people in spite of their experiences, like formerly incarcerated, but because of it, right? Because we are an asset. Especially the formerly incarcerated person who has been educated on my business,
Keep that plug.
is so my business is a declaration death to fast fashion. That's my mission. It's a thrifting company, and you know, I don't want to get into the politics of that, but yeah, I own a small business. I think so. Thank you. Yeah, so we operate outside of the fashion apparatus.
Right there, and you'll be the last question. Sorry, if there's more. We have the room till 6, but I definitely want to make sure people get coffee and stuff. You can still talk to the panelists after that. 1 and then 2.
My name's Maya. I'm a bracelet. Thank you for being here and speaking about your experiences. I wanted to ask you specifically about like the BARD prison initiative. I was like looking it up, and like BARD released a study saying that like that initiative has reduced recidivism rate significantly, and I was wondering like if there's been like a ripple effect with that initiative. Like, have other colleges been starting that, and do you think it's likely, if they haven't been, that it will start happening, and like if there's any way to like pressure schools into doing something like that, or like making sure that that.
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, BARD is the best example because it's like the only example we have at the moment. So they get the credit for that, keeping us out. But education in general prepares people to stay out of trouble, right? The educated person is less likely to get locked up. So yeah, BPI is a great program, right? It's a major part of my life. But they get the credit for that because it's like they're in there doing the work, right? And we need more colleges. We need more educational institutions to aid in those numbers. And I think anybody who gets involved in you hear their names in those studies, because it's proven. The majority, like I have 20 friends. We all, you know, have been released within 6 months of each other, and our contact with law enforcement is 0. And if we do have contact, they're asking us for it. I think any institution that gets involved in that, you hear their name.
And actually, you know, I always got 2 cents.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm happy to say that CUNY is building that pipeline. And they've been building this for a few years. It was Postos BCC actually is creating this network, and they have something called Future Now, where they actually build the pipeline. They go into Rikers, sometimes they get the kids home. And more specifically, John Jay, is called the Learning Collab. They actually have something coming up soon. I can find it and give you the info. And they actually are now offering classes to individuals who are incarcerated with the hope of bringing them into CUNY. So CUNY is building this out, is building it out, and it's a good thing. So I'll give you the information, anybody, and you can get involved. They always welcome people to get involved.
And I'll just say one quick thing is like, my goal before I retire, however many years ago, how many years in the future that is that there is a CUNY that is in the jail prison system of New York, right? Not that there are these one-offs or John Jay's doing its own thing or Hunter's doing its own thing, but like literally, I see that as a way of like, let's get rid of the prisons by actually like making them think that they're still prisons, but we've actually just turned them into colleges. That would be, and it's like a whole CUNY, right? That would be my.
Well, that's pretty true, because you know when we used to go to jail, it'd be like, I was away at college.
You guys are asking really, really good questions. Like, you guys are phenomenal. Really, like, applause to you guys. Like, you're following up and asking these things that I think that we often think about all the time. I think that really, like, it really has to start with inside, like, you know, we're thinking about rehabilitation when they come out, reentry, we throw this money towards reentry. And it's like reentry needs to stop like the minute somebody is incarcerated. And I think that there needs to be a higher emphasis on the schools within the system, because that shouldn't just be like day room time, right? It shouldn't just be like sitting down, like watching the clock. Like we are now forced to learn the continents, the planets, and like now, like maybe that will keep people out of jail because they don't want to learn like all of this stuff so much, and maybe that's an incentive. But I think that we really need to emphasize the actual school inside of the facility and just education itself. I think, you know, I say that I went to prison on purpose because it was better, and would I wanted to go there if there was such this great school there? Like I think that no, because education, like you said, is rehabilitation, because it allows you to see that the world is much bigger than us and the things that we're doing that get us locked up. And we realize that we have access to this world that's much larger, then we start to think, oh, I don't want to be on the block, like, or in the street. Like, I want to go and do this and expose to this. So I really do believe that you guys are onto something by even asking that question. I think it's education, be a rehabilitation, be an exposure to ideas, and just these ideas alone can change somebody's entire life.
So I think that education has to become, I mean, I have to keep saying this. I hate the system. I hate it. I hate how it looks. I hate what it does. I hate what it does. Look, there are systems in prison, right? Effective systems for punishment. Your first interaction with the correctional setting, they give you a book. These are the rules and regulations. If you break these rules, these are the punishments, right? So it's bad from the beginning. From the beginning, you're being punished for simple things, right? Like you don't know how to behave as soon as you get locked up. But if you break a rule, you get punished, right? And education is just something you stumbled upon. If you have a friend who has access to books or who knows what college is, they'll tell you where to go to get it. I think education, they should emphasize education as much as they emphasize the punishment aspect of it. As soon as you walk through the door, hey, these are the colleges, bro. These are the programs. This is what can keep you out of trouble. They don't do that. They have mechanisms in place, tiers, amount of SHU time you could get for messing up, but nothing to record milestones, nothing to emphasize the positive stuff. There needs to be more of that. If it is going to be rehabilitating in any way, that has to start from the beginning, not 6 months before you come home. Your first interaction with anything that's supposed to rehabilitate you should be positive, right? And I think that is a start. We need to see more of that.
I just keep hearing the inside out. Inside out. It just keeps coming up inside out. That the work needs to happen simultaneously inside out. And that's it. I have nothing more else to share. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Wonderful. Thank you for our panelists. Thank you for the panelists and everyone else for working together. They're in the back with the AV. And Hunter College. So there's coffee and I think OJ and fruits and something else, maybe some muffins. Please take some. It was paid for. Otherwise, it goes in the garbage. So take it home, do what you want. Excellent. Great.